They left her in the ravine to die. Legs gone, blood baked into the dirt, the sun doing the rest. She didn't scream, because screaming never saved anyone out here. The only thing that stood between her and the end was a man who had already lost everything and didn't know how to walk past one more broken soul. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Spring of 1881 settled hard over the Arizona territory, and the land around Copper Ridge lay dry and stripped bare, silent except for a wind that carried grit instead of mercy. The sun didn't warm, it punished, bleaching the Badlands into something brittle and sharp. Brush clung to life in patches, rocks split the earth like old wounds, and wagon ruts carved shallow scars across the flats. At the base of a narrow ravine, where the slope folded inward, the ground told a story no one had stayed to finish. Blood had darkened and cracked into the soil. Broken weapons lay scattered. A torn strip of military blue fluttered weakly against a stone. Empty canteens rolled when the wind nudged them. Horse tracks crossed boot prints in jagged patterns, fast and panicked. The fight had happened days ago, not many, but long enough for the heat to do its work. And in the center of it all she lay still. Saka had once stood straight with a spear balanced in her hand, shoulders squared, eyes sharp. Among her people, she had earned the right to stand beside the men, not behind them. She could ride hard, strike clean, disappear into shadow when the land called for it. She knew how to read the earth and the air, how to move without leaving herself behind. All of that ended when the blast came too close. A cannon fired without care tore through the lower halves of her legs, splitting flesh and bone into ruin. There was no travois, no time, no safe ground. Soldiers pressed from the west, and survival demanded cruelty. Her brother's hands shook as he heated the blade. Tears ran down his face as he did what had to be done. He cut fast, wrapped the stumps as best he could, and kissed her forehead once. No speeches, no promises that could survive the truth. Just one look between them that said everything and nothing. He left her a skin of water and rawhide straps, then turned and followed the others into the hills. For a while, she thought they were right. The pain was a living thing crawling through her body. Fever took her, released her, then came back again. The first night she slipped into darkness. The second, she woke with ants crawling over her belly, her arms shaking too badly to drive them away. By the third day, her skin blistered under the sun. The dress she wore, once strong and fitted, had been torn in the blast, fallen open across her chest, leaving skin exposed to the sky. She didn't scream. Screaming never helped. When he found her, she didn't move. Wade Holt was 36. Born in Missouri, raised hard, sent to war too young and too empty to believe in the cause he fought for. He came home with a limp, a handful of scars, and no taste for crowds. He tried mining, cattle work, bounty riding, anything that promised distance, but nothing held. In the end, he bought a narrow stretch of land in the Arizona territory, with what little pay he had left and kept to himself. He didn't drink, didn't talk much either. Folks in Copper Ridge whispered that he'd gone half mad. After the fire that took his wife 3 years back, some swore they'd seen him stand at the edge of his field for hours, staring at nothing like it might answer him. That day he was tracking 3 stray steers that had broken off from his herd. Their prints cut north across the flats and dipped toward the ravine. Wade rode slow, rifle slung across his back, hat pulled low over pale blue eyes. His horse, a lean gelding named Brisk, stopped short at the edge of the gulch. Ears pricked, breath steady. Wade followed the horse's gaze, scanning brush and shadow. Then he heard it, not an animal sound, but a rasp, thin and human. He dismounted, hand brushing the revolver at his hip, boots scuffing dirt as heat shimmered off the rocks. Then he saw her. At first, he thought she was already gone. Her body lay twisted, dust-coated, arms flung wide like she'd fallen from height. The smell of dried blood and sweat hit him hard. Then her chest moved barely. Wade crouched, eyes narrowing. Apache. The dress had once been stitched with care. Bone and hide worked clean. Now it hung torn and ruined. He didn't look long. Her lips were cracked, eyes half-lidded. The bindings at her thighs were dark, swollen, soaked through but not rotted. Not yet. He stepped back, weighing the truth. If he walked away, she might live another hour, maybe two. If he stayed, trouble would follow. A wounded Apache woman on his land could end him. He exhaled, pulled off his hat, glanced once around the ravine, then bent and slid his arms beneath her back and what remained of her legs. Her body flinched. Her eyes opened wider, fixed on him, not begging, not pleading, just waiting. He said nothing, adjusted her weight against his chest, and turned back toward the horse. She groaned once, broken and low. He didn't stop. The ranch sat alone under a rising wind when he returned, dust twisting across the yard. The cabin was a single room of split pine, patched with iron, the barn leaning like it was tired of standing. Wade carried her straight inside and laid her gently on his narrow cot. She watched everything, eyes tracking the walls, the weapons, the shelves. Wade worked without words, boiling water, tearing clean strips from an old sheet, lifting the ruined cloth from her thighs with care and without staring. The wounds were angry but alive. He cleaned them with water and pine sap, rewrapped them slow and tight. His hands were rough, movements precise. She didn't cry. When night came, he lit a lamp. She slept or passed out. He sat at the table, arms folded, watching her breathe. Saka woke before dawn, staring at the ceiling, fingers brushing the empty space where her legs should have been. Her throat tightened, but she didn't move. Boots crossed dirt outside. Wade came in with a tin bowl and set it beside her, bread soaked in broth. She didn't eat, just watched him. He didn't ask her name or explain himself. He nodded once and turned to leave. "Silent man," she rasped. He paused, didn't turn, then stepped back outside. The wind shook the shutters as morning broke. She still hadn't touched the food when he returned with kindling. She was sitting up now, propped against the wall, eyes sharper, watching him move. When she slipped, trying to adjust herself, he crouched beside her. "You'll tear the stitches," he said, voice rough from disuse. He helped her sit straighter, then brought over a cut-down chair. He showed her how to shift, how to brace. She moved with effort, breath quick, teeth clenched. He steadied her without pressing. When she was settled, he stepped back. She studied the room. The crack in the wall, the coat on the peg, the rifle by the door. "You live alone?" she asked. He nodded. "You could have left me." "I didn't." Silence settled between them. Heavy but not hostile. He brought her food again. This time she ate. That afternoon, he found her dragging herself across the floor, sweat-soaked, stubborn. "I'm not rotting in that bed," she muttered. He lifted her back without argument, then went outside. That night, he built her something in the barn, sawing and hammering under an oil lamp, shaping wood into a low, rolling platform with rails and padding, wheels salvaged from a broken cart. By morning, he set it beside her cot. She touched it, eyes unreadable. "You made this," he shrugged. "I don't beg." "You didn't." They found a rhythm that day, slow and hard. He lifted her into the seat, showed her how to move. She cursed quietly but didn't quit. That night she asked his name. "Wade," he said. She repeated it softly. Alive in a stranger's house. No legs, no kin, no future she could see. But for the first time since the blast, she didn't want to die. The days that followed settled into something neither of them named, but both felt. Wade rose before the sun every morning. Habit carved into him long before Saka had ever been carried into his cabin. He fed the horses, split wood, hauled water, checked fence lines with the same steady patience he used on everything else. His limp slowed him but never stopped him. He worked because work kept the noise away. Inside the cabin, Saka learned her new body inch by inch. The rolling platform scraped softly across the wooden floor as she pulled, herself from wall to table, from stove to doorway. Her palms blistered by the second day. She wrapped them in cloth and kept going. When she tried lifting the kettle and dropped it, pain flashing through her abdomen. She rested for hours and then tried again. She didn't ask for help unless she had to. Wade noticed. He always noticed, even when he didn't say anything. By the end of the week, he'd nailed small blocks under the platform so it wouldn't slide when she braced herself. She didn't thank him. She just started using it. One evening, while he whittled near the fire, she asked, "You fight?" He didn't answer at first. The blade moved slow through cedar. "Confederate," he said finally. Missouri. She studied him. The scar near his ear, the way his jaw tightened. And now you help me. War's done. That was all he gave her. 2 days later, the fever took her. It came on quiet, sweat first, then shivering that shook the cot. Wade didn't leave her side. He boiled water, wiped her skin, forced willow bark between her lips when she fought him. When she cried out in her sleep, hands clawing at the blanket, he held her shoulders down until the storm passed. She whispered names he didn't know. One of them over and over, Tana. When the fever broke, her eyes were clear but heavy. You stayed, she murmured. He nodded. You're still here. It mattered more than either of them said. As her strength returned, she asked about the land, the animals, the town half a day away. He answered in fragments. She asked about his wife. He went quiet. She didn't press. She watched instead, saw the way he paused by the window sometimes, the coat he never moved. She respected his silence the way he respected her scars. One afternoon, her dress slipped open again, fabric torn thin from dragging herself across the floor. She caught him glance, then look away. Does it bother you? She asked, testing him. He set the knife down. You're a woman. A broken one. No, just that. That night, something shifted. She didn't pull the blanket so high. When he lifted her into the cot, she didn't turn away. You ain't scared of me, she said. No, why? Because you're alive. She smiled then, small but real. Spring deepened. The air warmed, dust and mesquite riding the wind. Wade brought her outside one evening, carried her onto the porch so she could feel it on her skin. The sky burned orange and purple over the hills. She leaned into him, shoulder brushing his arm. You ever touch a woman like this? She asked softly. He waited. She guided his hand to her hip, the curve of scarred flesh warm beneath his palm. I still want it, she said. He kissed her then, careful, sure. Inside the cabin later, they came together slow, without urgency, without shame. He stayed when it was done. In the dark, they held each other like people who knew what it cost to be left behind. The mornings after were quieter somehow, steadier. She wore one of his old shirts now, cinched tight with a belt she'd stitched herself. He'd left it folded on her cot without a word. They ate together, sat together. One evening she asked about his daughter. He told her, 2 years old. Fire took her too. She carved a bead from bone and gave it to him. It means day, she said. By June the heat pressed down hard. Cicadas screamed in the trees. Saka rolled herself down the ramp Wade built and fed the chickens, sunlight on her face. He watched her from the barn, something tight loosening in his chest. That piece held until the rider came, dust rising on the east trail. Wade grabbed his rifle. Saka hid the knife beneath her blanket. The man asked questions. Wade gave nothing. When he left, neither of them spoke for a long time. They know, she said finally. They always did, Wade answered. That night, she braided leather for a knife sling. 2 days later, she kissed him first. Not for comfort, but because she chose him. I'm not going anywhere, she told him. He believed her. The first sign of trouble didn't come with gunfire or shouting. It came with absence. The birds went quiet one morning. The usual chatter around the cottonwoods dropping into a hollow stillness that made Wade pause with his boot half-laced. He stood there bent over listening. The wind moved through the grass, but nothing else stirred. No crows, no finches. Even the chickens were hushed. He straightened slowly and reached for his rifle. Saka noticed the change in him immediately. She always did. From her place near the window, she watched his shoulders set. The way his jaw locked into that old, familiar line, the one he'd worn when men tried to kill him for reasons that no longer mattered. Someone coming? She asked. Maybe, he said. Maybe not. He stepped outside, scanning the ridgeline. The sky was a hard blue, sun already sharp despite the early hour. Nothing moved. Still, the feeling stayed with him, like a thorn under skin. By noon it proved justified. 2 riders appeared from the south trail, slow and deliberate. They didn't wave, didn't hurry, just rode like men who already knew where they were going. Wade didn't go to meet them. He stayed by the cabin, rifle resting against the porch rail. Saka rolled herself into the shadow beside the door, knife strapped to her thigh now, hidden beneath her skirt. She'd insisted on learning how to throw it seated. He'd insisted she practice until she could hit a post dead center every time. The riders stopped a short distance away. One of them dismounted, tall, clean-shaven, city boots dusted but not worn. The other stayed mounted, hand loose near his holster. "Afternoon," the tall one called. "You Wade Mercer?" Wade didn't answer right away. He looked at the man like he was measuring a fence post. "Depends who's asking." The man smiled thinly. "Name's Collier. Territorial agent." That word settled heavy. "We're looking for an Apache woman," Collier continued. "Missing. Believed taken in after the relocation order." Saka's fingers tightened around the knife handle. Her pulse beat loud in her ears, but her face stayed calm. She'd lived too long pretending not to exist to forget how. Wade stepped forward just enough to block the doorway. "No Apaches here." Collier's gaze flicked past him, sharp. He saw the ramp, the marks on the floor, the shadow inside the cabin. "You live alone out here, Mercer?" he asked. "Mostly." "Mostly," Collier echoed. "Funny thing about mostly, leaves room." The mounted man shifted. Leather creaked. The horse snorted. Collier took another step forward. That was when Saka spoke. "You should leave." Her voice was steady. Not loud, but it carried. Collier's eyebrows lifted as he finally looked directly at her, took in the scars, the seated posture, the way her eyes didn't drop. "Well," he said, "there you are." Wade raised the rifle an inch. "She's under my roof," he said. "You don't take people from my roof." Collier chuckled. "You don't own the land, Mercer. Government does. And she belongs to a reservation 3 days east." "I belong where I sit," Saka said. "And I sit here." The air went tight. Collier studied her longer this time. Then he sighed, almost regretful. "I don't want trouble, but orders are orders. You can step aside or—" The knife flew. It struck the dirt between Collier's boots, buried to the hilt. "You take one more step," Saka said, "and the next one is not the ground." Silence fell like a held breath. Collier looked down at the blade, then up at Wade's rifle, then back at Saka. For a long moment, no one moved. Finally, Collier lifted his hands slightly. "Easy," he said, "easy." He backed away one step, then another. "This isn't over," he said. "You know that." Wade didn't answer. The two men mounted and rode off, dust trailing behind them like a warning. When they were gone, Wade exhaled for the first time in minutes. Saka's hand shook then, just a little. She hated that they did. "They'll come back," she said. "I know." That night Wade packed. Not everything. Just what mattered. Ammunition, food, the papers he'd never shown her, the bone bead she'd given him. "You're leaving?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "We are." They moved before dawn. He hitched the mule to the wagon, laid thick blankets across the bed, built a brace so she could sit without pain. She helped where she could, tying knots, checking straps, memorizing the land they were about to leave. As the cabin disappeared behind them, Saka didn't look back. She'd learned what looking back cost. They traveled north, into rougher country. Hills cut sharp. Trails faded into animal paths. Wade chose routes no patrol would bother with. On the 4th day, they made camp near a dry arroyo. That was when the riders found them. 3 this time. Shots rang out before words. Wade fired first, dropping one from the saddle. The others scattered. Saka ducked low, rolled behind a rock, knife gone. Pistol in her hand now, the one Wade had taught her to load, to steady, to fire without flinching. She waited, counted breaths. A man rushed from the left. She fired. He fell screaming, clutching his leg. The 3rd rider fled. When it was over, the silence came back heavier than before. Wade knelt beside her, checked her for blood. "You hurt?" "No." He pulled her into his chest, held her like the world might try again, at any second. That night, as they lay under the stars, Saka spoke into the dark. "If you send me away," she said, "I will understand." Wade didn't hesitate. "I won't," he said, "ever." She turned her face into his shoulder and let herself believe him. The land stretched on ahead, hard, unforgiving, and theirs only as long as they could hold it. But for the first time since fire and iron had taken her legs, Saka felt something stronger than fear. She felt chosen. They buried the man they'd killed at dawn, not because he deserved it, but because leaving bodies behind made men easier to hunt. Wade dug the grave while Saka kept watch, pistol resting across her knees, eyes sweeping the ridgeline with a patience born from loss. When it was done, Wade marked the spot with a single stone and nothing else. No name, no prayer. The earth didn't care who you were. They moved again before the sun climbed high. The country grew meaner the farther north they went. Rocky breaks, scrub that tore at skin, narrow passes where sound carried too far. Wade chose them anyway. He trusted places others feared. Fear kept men away. By the seventh day the mule was lathered and tired. They found a shelf of land above a narrow valley where water still ran. Thin but clear, juniper and stone offered cover. From above, you could see anyone coming hours before they arrived. This is it, Wade said. Saka studied the land, felt the slope beneath her palms, the way the wind moved. She closed her eyes. It listens, she said. Good place. They built slow. Wade cut timber, set stone, dug earth. Saka planned, measured. She told him where to place the doorway so morning light reached the bed, where to set the fire pit so smoke wouldn't betray them. She stitched leather straps, reinforced her platform, carved tools from bone and antler. Pain lived with her, constant and dull, but purpose made it quieter. Weeks passed. The first snow came early, light and uncertain. Wade worried. Saka watched the sky. Winter will be short, she said, but sharp. It was. They learned the new cabin like a body, where it creaked, where heat escaped, where shadows gathered. At night they lay close, not always touching, but always aware of each other's breathing. Some nights she dreamed of running, other nights of fire. When she woke shaking, Wade didn't speak. He just placed his hand where she could feel it. Alive, still here. The riders returned in late winter. Not soldiers, locals, men who smelled opportunity. They came at dusk, 5 of them, confident in numbers. Wade saw them from the ridge and came back fast, face set. Saka didn't panic. She loaded the pistol, checked the knife, rolled herself into position behind stone they'd stacked just for this reason. Don't come out unless I say, Wade told her. She grabbed his wrist. Don't die, she said. He bent, kissed her forehead once, then went. The first shot came from the trees. Wade dropped one before the man even knew he'd been seen. The others scattered, yelling. Saka waited until one tried to flank, then fired. The recoil hurt. She didn't care. He went down hard. A third rushed the cabin. Saka met him at the door. He froze when he saw her, seated, scarred, eyes steady as stone. What the hell? The knife took him in the throat. When it was done, only one rider fled. Wade wanted to chase. Saka stopped him. Let him run, she said. Fear travels faster than bullets. Spring came quiet after that. No more riders, no patrols. The world seemed to forget them. One morning, months later, Wade returned from checking traps to find Saka outside. Sunlight on her hair, something small bundled in her arms. For one terrible heartbeat, he thought she was hurt. Then it moved. He dropped everything. A child? His voice cracked. Saka nodded. Found him near the creek. Wagon tracks, blood, no bodies. The baby whimpered, tiny and furious at the world. He chose us, she said. Wade knelt beside her, hands trembling as he touched the child's fist. It wrapped around his finger. Something broke open in his chest. They named him Eli. Years passed. The valley changed with them. Eli learned to walk between Wade's boots and Saka's wheels. He learned to shoot before he learned to read. Learned 2 languages. Learned that strength did not always stand. Travelers sometimes came, stayed, left. They spoke of the woman who ruled the high valley from a seated throne of stone, of the man who stood beside her like an old oak, scarred, unbending. They were never lonely. One evening, long after the fires of the past had cooled into stories, Wade sat beside Saka as the sun bled into the hills. You ever regret staying? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she took his hand and placed it over her heart. I was left behind once, she said. This time I was chosen. He leaned his forehead against hers. So the world went on. Harsh, unfair. But in one quiet valley, 2 broken lives had made something whole and refused to give it back.